Talking about one of our favorite topics, human beings. You guessed it, we're talking about sex. And we ain't just talking about any old sex. We're talking about good sex, right? But what is that? What is good sex? What does that look like? What does that feel like? We're gonna delve into this topic, try to share some insights. So if you're interested, stay tuned. My name is Liana Allen, and you're tuned into Mixed Assets. Let's talk about sex. Okay. So today I'm joined again by my good pal Sion. Thank you for being here. And we're talking about sex.
Yeah.
In Guyana, in a productive way. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do this thing. Good sex though. What is that?
Well, I don't know. Do we even know if we would have experienced that before?
Right.
How do we even begin talking about sex? Just let's get the whole gloom out of the way, and I really try to understand this thing called sex, how important it is in marriages, and how we can really improve.
Right. Yes, people, in the context of marriage, we're talking about sex in marriage, if we needed to clarify that. Yeah.
Right. So tell me, Liana, do you think that you know what that is?
I think I do.
Okay, that's...
If I may say so. To me, good sex in the context of marriage has to do with both persons being fulfilled. I don't believe that God intended sex or designed sex to be selfish.
Right.
It's supposed to be an act where both persons are giving and receiving pleasure. Should be an experience that is not only physical, but also has emotional needs being satisfied. You know, your need for connection and your need for belonging. It's having those, that's my view, having those various needs met in the process of coming together. And both persons being able to walk away saying, yeah, that was epic.
All right.
To me, that is good sex.
Right.
What about you? You have a different view?
It's along the same lines, right? Of both persons being really fulfilled in terms of what you want out of it.
Yeah.
And really understanding what the other person wants out of it and doing as much as you can to fulfill that need.
Right.
But herein lies the issue, right? I mean, there are a lot of issues when it comes to sex.
Lots.
Right? And a lot of people come from a background of in marriage not being the first sexual experience for them.
Right.
So how do you communicate what good sex is? And if you experience it outside of a marital atmosphere, a marital I know you gotta come into marriage. Is that confining? Because when we talk about sex, we gotta be real, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes this type of sex that people have is not, straight and narrow.
Right.
So now you settle down, you come into marriage, and now you're like, how can I experience that same level, that same mountaintop experience, right? In this straight and narrow.
Yeah. But I think I think we have it backwards sometimes because like we said, we're being real. A lot of times you think that it is outside of marriage that you get the what they say, you want a lady in the streets but a freak in the sheets type of sex. But then in marriage it just becomes this very monotonous
lady in the sheets,
just a lady in the sheets type of experience. When really it's supposed to be it's supposed to be the other way around, but you're supposed to have the space to be the freak in the sheets in your marriage. But that takes cultivation, at least to me. There's something I refer to as having a sexual safe space.
Right.
And many persons are not intentional of creating that in their marriage. Someone may have a need that their spouse does not.
Right.
But the spouse may not feel comfortable to express the need for that specific thing.
That's right.
Or express the need to want the desire to explore it because they're afraid of their spouses judging them or looking down on them like, you want to do that? Like this whole condescending thing. And so the need doesn't go away by not being able to talk about it.
Right.
So you end up with an unsatisfied sexual life. And if you don't find a way how to manage that need easily, just like we spoke about before, about depositing sexual deposits too. And there are people out there that are willing to satisfy that need that your spouse may not. So the ripple effects can be so many going forward. So I think the real question is, what do we do to start creating a sexual safe space in our relationships? How do we even cultivate that, especially if the person that we're married to comes from a very reserved background? And you find that with a lot of church girls.
Yeah, you grew up in the church.
You grew up in the church. You don't really talk about sex. You just know it's something that you're supposed to do when you get married, and children come from it, but everything else about it is not discussed.
Right.
So somebody from that perspective not gonna want to get wet and wild with you because that's not proper. So what can a man do to help his wife feel, hey, this is a safe space for us? So what do you think?
I think it comes from the root cause of persons not really knowing themselves sexually. Right. A lot of times to know exactly what they want. And a lot of things sexually, nobody sits down and tells you,
Yeah,
like,
you
if
go
you
light.
touch this button, this light will come on. Right?
Right.
But a lot of so in your marriage, in your relationship, you can experiment. You know, listen. And again, the safe space has to be there.
Yeah.
Like no judgment here, no judgment.
No judgment zone.
Right?
Yeah.
And let's figure out what we both need, because if you do it right, a lot of times you come into marriage and that's your first real experience. Right? Your first experience where you're not worried about what society thinks, what people think, and you're really comfortable to explore and explode for in your sexual experience.
Yeah.
So when you and your spouse are at that point where you can say, you know what, I just read about this, let's try it, and to maintain that level of excitement. And sex shouldn't just be, oh, I'm serving him or he's serving me.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the thing that is, it can happen spontaneously, and we can both enjoy it, right? But a lot of times, however, in relationships, the man has so much sexual drive, need, and women go through these phases.
Yes.
You know? And men are like on all the time.
Yeah. Don't
Right?
turn off.
So when women are at their lows, when they're not really, they don't want to just have sex. They probably just want to be cuddled. They probably just want to be, touched and reaffirmed. And men just want to get a workout out. How do we bridge that? And a lot of times, some guys even, they don't know what foreplay is, and
man, you touching lots of stuff.
They don't know what foreplay is, and they don't know how to really get what they want out of the person that they're with. So they expect that whenever they're ready,
she's somehow ready.
Bam, bam.
Thank you, ma'am.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of times there's this difference between what we really want from sex, and that's what we're trying to discuss. We're trying to figure out today.
But I think you mentioned something really important where you talked about reading. A lot of the times we don't educate ourselves about sexual content, not porn, but just understanding the body better, understanding yourself better in that process. Reading content that talks about sex. We don't do the research.
Right.
So a lot of what we know about how to have sex and all these different things, we learn from the music that we listen to. We learn from, whatever our own inclinations may be, but they may not be informed.
Right.
And so if somebody is coming to the marriage that has not had sex before, even they may have personal apprehensions, especially as a female. Because especially if the man has had sexual partners before,
Right.
You're concerned, is he going to compare you with is she going to compare me with these other people that she would have had sex with in the past? Is my performance going to be good
Right.
enough? Would I live up to their expectations? Would I know what to do? Or would they be gracious? Would they be kind? And all these other different dynamics. But one of the important things in that regard is patience. Now we're going to bring in our, I don't want to say specialist, but somebody that has been having sex longer than we have.
Much longer.
To be able to share their insights and their thoughts as we further discuss this topic. So wait right there and we'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back, guys. We have with us Mr. Will Campbell. He's a psychologist, lecturer, and a family counselor, and he's here to join the conversation that we had just now about sex, different types of sex, what is good sex, and we led the conversation asking about foreplay, and some guys not wanting to do foreplay, thinking that foreplay is too much work.
What are the advantages of foreplay, Mr. Campbell? What can we say to persuade these young men to see the benefit of it? And that is something that is needed.
I wanted to start with a disclaimer that I'm not an expert. Seriously though, to answer your question directly, a big advantage of foreplay is that at the end of the day, you know that your woman is pleased.
Right.
And I feel like, first of all, let's start on the premise that sex should be a mutual experience
Right.
of pleasure, so that the man is pleased, the woman is pleased, both partners are pleased at the end of it. Both partners receive pleasure
Right.
and are satisfied. And if foreplay is what it takes, if a few moments, you spend a little bit more time and ensure that she is nice and ready. If that is what will get her to a place where both of you walk away feeling satisfied,
Right.
then why not?
Yeah.
How could you as the man walk away from there feeling satisfied and you haven't done anything for the lady?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you find too, when there is no foreplay involved, then how do I say this?
Just say it.
I'm thinking performance-wise for her. It's more of a checking the box type of activity she's going through, and nobody, I would think, wants to have sex with a mannequin.
Right.
Somebody that is unresponsive to you. But if you don't take the time to meet some of her needs in that process, then you end up feeling like a macho man, but she's out there still dissatisfied and longing for someone to meet that need that is not being met through you.
And I feel like as a man, that should not be a space that you want to be in, where your woman is longing, wishing for something that you are not able or not willing to give.
Yeah.
But sorry to interrupt you like that, but a lot of times men think that that's a fault of the woman. If she is not ready, she didn't experience anything. They think that they did everything right.
Something wrong with you.
Why you didn't show up?
I came to the party.
Interesting.
So what if something is wrong with her? Let us take that as our jump off point. What if something is wrong with her, and it is something that you could help fix? Then why not? At the end of the day, you're both happy, and that is what we're looking for, right? Right?
Should be.
Yeah.
I would like to hope. Yeah, for sure. But we live in a culture where there is so much. Sex is so easy now. Back in the day, you had to put a ring on it to get anything, and now it's you DM somebody. The culture through which sex is even engaged in is much more loose, much more easily accessible. And for many, they think that casual sex is it's cool, it's fine, it's just what you do. You need to release, and that's it. And you don't really need to save. You don't need to be married, first thing. You don't need to save yourself for marriage to do that. Like, what do we say to someone that with that perspective that they can have good sex casually, and there is no need to try to achieve that in a marriage situation?
Right. So, among other things, sex is a psychological connection. Sex involves psychological connection.
Right.
And a lot of people are not aware, but when you engage in sexual activity with a person, the hormones are released that foster bonding. And in the absence of a commitment, here is your brain feeling connected with somebody, and there is no real connection.
Right.
There is no real connection outside of that. So you feel bonded to this person, but there is no commitment. And that very often leaves a lot of people feeling empty and used and unfulfilled in the long run. You know, a sense of guilt, a sense of loss, even sometimes. And this happens a lot more with women, and there is a psychological reason for that. Again, in fact, there's a physiological reason for that. Okay. And that is for men. When men engage in sexual activity, much more dopamine than oxytocin. The bonding hormone. Yes, thank you. So for the man, there's a lot more dopamine and maybe not as much serotonin. Okay. So a man can walk away from that generally and not feel connected.
I see.
The woman, on the other hand, she has a reverse situation going on, and this is typical, right? Not everybody has the same experience. But typically, the woman releases a lot more oxytocin, which makes her feel bonded to that sexual partner.
Right.
And yes, she may have pleasure as well, a dopamine response, but there's that oxytocin response, and she feels bonded to that person. Now, you, as the woman, feeling bonded to somebody who all they got out of that was pleasure.
Yeah.
And you see how that could create, a tension between what he is expecting, his expectations and her expectations, and his needs and her needs. So a lot of people walk away from casual sex feeling cheapened, feeling used, feeling unfulfilled.
Yeah.
But I have some questions. Thank you for being here. I have some burning questions of mine about sex.
You have to pay for this.
The first one, we had a discussion a little earlier about persons having sex before marriage and it being not really, along the straight and narrow, multiple partners at the same time, these type of things. And now they're coming to they come into this confinement, it seems, right? How can they, is there anything that happens? Is there any risk involved in having these, wild sexual experiences, and now they come into marriage, it's more toned down? How can persons bridge that gap? Because a lot of persons, like you said, who've had casual sex and different kinds of sex at clubs, with multiple people, and whatever the case is, they eventually probably get married, right? And now their husband is not the guy in the nightclub. He's not multiple people at the same time. So there seems to, in my head, there's a disconnect that can occur, or there's a danger that you can, place yourself in.
Yeah.
But if this already happened, how can we move on from there and really build a good sexual experience in our marriage?
And you're absolutely right about the fact that after coming off of that, it could feel really anticlimactic, and you end up in a space where you're longing for what used to be sometimes, and you can't have it within the context. And so that should be avoided in the first place.
Right.
It should be avoided in the first place, because I don't know if you've had the experience of eating chocolate and then eating a sweet orange, or an orange that was supposed to be sweet.
Yes.
After the chocolate, the orange does not taste
Very
sweet at
sour.
all. And so a lot of people have had that experience in the context of their sexual activity. And so it should be avoided. The other thing is that you'd have to do two things really. Shift your mindset and shift your expectations permanently, hopefully. And the other is you can build a situation where you're getting what you want within the context of your relationship, and that requires a lot of communication and a lot of compromise and a lot of understanding and a lot of sharing. Again, we have to see sex as sharing. You know, I don't believe in this whole idea, I give you sex, I give you sex. It's not a giving thing.
Right.
It's a sharing.
Yeah.
And so if you have conversations, you know what, how about you do this because I would feel better if, you know, I like it better when this happens. You have that conversation. Then you could create experiences in your own bedroom that you can really enjoy.
Yeah. What do we say to the, okay, I have two scenarios in my head. The young woman who in this culture is taught that, you know, this equality in a sense. So if a man can have multiple partners, so can I. We can do the same thing. And just the way he is unscathed, well, for lack of a better term, walking away from that type of situation, I can build my mind or try to build my mind to be like that. So there is no labeling. If this is how he lives, then I can live this way. And then for the young man who grows up in an environment that is taught you don't do certain things with women. She can, for example, go down on you, but you can't go down on her.
Right.
And this is bad man don't do these things. You know, how do we help people navigate the culture as it relates to what they do and what they expect in their sexual experiences and how that frames for them?
Okay, you may have to remind me of the second one
No problem.
by the time I get through the first one. So, men and women are equal. There is no question about that, you know. But we're different.
Yes.
And so, physiologically and psychologically, the playing field is, I'm not sure I should say not level, it's just not the same. It's not just the same playing field. So the man can walk away without a second thought. But most women don't, their brain does not allow them, their physiology, their psychology does not allow them to walk away the same way. And I don't know if you've paid attention to it, but most people who habitually have casual sex also use mind-altering substances, alcohol or other drugs.
Okay.
And most times when they have the sex, it is under that influence. What I'm saying here is that you have to numb a part of you. You have to change who you are in order to really enjoy these exchanges. And by the time you finish changing who you are, then you don't even know who you are after that.
Right.
And so the playing field is not level, and so you can't choose to do it because men are doing it, you're doing it, and you know, the responses are not the same, the consequences are not the same. And so even the social consequences are not the same. As liberators as we like to think that we are, we still label women who are as promiscuous. And you know, you hardly hear people saying a man is promiscuous. When we talk about promiscuity, we're talking about women. So we're still not at that place where we're equal socially. But even if we were, we are different psychologically. We're different physiologically, and so the responses will be different, and a woman will not be able to walk away without these psychological consequences in a similar way that a man might be able to do that. In terms of men who have this whole, you know, bad man mentality, I'm going back to where I started. What kind of bad man are you if your woman is longing to be with some other man? What kind of bad man are you if she's, you know, she knows somebody else who is doing what you're, or who would be willing to do what you're not willing to do, and you know, and she wants to be with that person. Now she may not act on it, but the two of you are, you know, getting hot and busy, and in her head she has an image that is not your image. You know, what kind of bad man is that then? You know. So you know, and then we, again, like I said, sex is a shared activity. So why are you treating this as though it was a war? You know, why are you treating it as though this is something where I have to go in there and conquer? when it's a
What's
shared
going on in
experience.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. I have another question. This is the second of my.
See how you cover the questions so
He box you out there.
This is second of my. I would have to pay for this question. Let me use it now. But it's a more serious question though, and it's in the context of marriage and sex, where some women feel violated by their husbands if they don't agree. Let's say he wants to have sex tonight, and I say no, I don't. But then he forces himself on her because in his mind he has to fulfill his need, and they're at that place where is that considered? Is that any type of crime? And when does it become serious enough for her to take actions?
Well, I'm not a legal mind, but my understanding is that legally, if you engage in sex with somebody against their will, then it's criminal.
Right.
That's rape.
Yeah.
And so whether you're married to that person or not, if you don't have that person's consent, you have committed a criminal offense. You have committed a crime. I don't feel like it should ever get to that stage though.
Yeah.
And so I think that there could be times when one person doesn't feel like engaging in sex, but they do it for the benefit of the other person. There could be that compromise. Or there could be a situation where a person says, "Man, I'm a little tired. Let's catch some sleep and then do it in the morning because sometimes it's nicer in the morning."
Yeah.
So there could be that compromise. And I very often, and maybe this is part of the whole foreplay thing, very often it is a woman who doesn't want to have sex, and there is a reason why she doesn't, because you have to turn on a woman's mind before you can turn on her body. You have to turn her on emotionally before you can turn her on physically. And very often as men, we don't take the time to do that. And so we rough her up during the day. We treat her however we want. We overwork her essentially during the day. She was slaving around the house and we throw back watching 2020. and then nighttime, we all rested and hyped up, and she burnt out. But we want her to now come and do gymnastics.
Sorry to do.
So we could compromise, we could help out, and we need to understand that we need to put her in a healthy, comfortable, emotional space if we want her to be receptive to our sexual advances.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
We were talking about that earlier too, because I was saying that in addition to his efforts, though he should make the efforts, I think sometimes as women we can make an effort as well.
Yes,
in the sense
absolutely.
that, one of the things you can do is to tell yourself that you like sex too. And I think a lot of women don't do that. It's more compliance.
But we were taught, especially women, that sex is a nasty thing. And so that mindset doesn't allow, remember, for a woman it has to be in the mind. A man doesn't need his mind for sex. A man needs his brain.
Mindless activity.
For the most part, a man does not need his brain involved in that activity at all. And in a woman's brain, this seed has been planted and reinforced over time that sex is bad and nasty. And so, to get her to that place to see herself as more than just being compliant sometimes is difficult, because somewhere in her subconscious space there is this thing that says what you're about to do is the nasty. In fact, that's one of the names we call. That's one of the names we've given to sex, the nasty. And locally, when we were growing up, it's called wickedness and worthlessness, and all of these negative terms that really have an impact. And I am one of those people who believes that words, the way we frame it in our words, have a lot of impact in the way our brains process it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if she sees it as the nasty or wickedness or worthlessness, then it becomes a little more difficult for her to see herself as a willing participant and just somebody who trying to please your husband.
Right.
And it is not you giving he little sex, it's the two of you sharing in this beautiful experience.
It's a reframing of it. Go ahead, a reframing of it in the mind.
All right. I just remember having in my marriage sometimes, and I would laugh at it sometimes. we finished with devotion. And I'd be like, you know what? Trying to set the mood. And she's like, but we just pray. It's like, God is serious. It's like, God set us up for this, Right? But just like what you're saying, a lot of people think that, because they are cultured in such a way that sex is, this sinful act. That when they're placed in an environment that allows, and really encourages it, then they don't know how to act.
Right, you can't move away from this whole notion that this thing, something wrong with it, So every time you do it, you feel like, what? I wonder if God watching me.
Should I enjoy this as much? No, let me rate it.
Yeah, I've heard religious people, Christian people in particular, saying things like sex is not for enjoyment. And
wow.
I don't know where
That's
they
sad.
found that. Yeah, that must be
is
sad. That must be sad. I mean, why would God put all them hypersensitive nerve endings in those nice places if we were not supposed to enjoy this?
Yeah. We tend to separate God from the act so much. Create this whole chasm between God but God is the author of sex.
He's the one that created us with the capacity for sex, and he said, y'all go on,
be fruitful,
do stuff,
go ahead. And it doesn't say, like we were saying earlier, thou shalt have missionary. It doesn't say that in the Bible. But this a lot of women have this perspective that, okay, if I do this or if I do that, I would look indecent, or he might think, okay,
Indecent
maybe a little too freaky.
Who are you gonna look indecent to?
Angels. Watching us.
God forbid it. What does a man do? A man that is willing to put in the work to help to bring his wife along to that place where she can feel free to express herself sexually as well. What are some things that he can do? I can imagine it would take time and patience to help tear down some of those walls, because the religious walls are so high. I mean, I think I had so many high religious walls when we first got married, and it took a lot of patience from my husband and insurance that I'm safe in this space. But practically, what can men do to help, that are willing to do it, to help their women get to this place where, okay, I'm safe here, I can do this here, it's okay, he's not gonna judge me, and all these different things.
You said it. Safe space, assurance, patience. All of those. So you're going to have to be patient, because you have to understand that what you are trying to undo is years. You're trying to reteach and help someone unlearn many years of learning. So you have to be patient with that process. You have to, and when that person ever frees up, then you have to make that person feel safe freeing up and expressing, so that you are not judging and you are not condemning and you are not adding to the inhibitions that the person is already struggling with. You have to create a safe space where you can talk, where she can talk about what she wants and what she enjoys and what she would prefer that you do, and then you try to do these things, and understand again that when a woman feels emotionally safe with you, then she's more likely to, let go of the inhibitions and
rock your world.
I was gonna say bring it up, but
oh man, yeah. See, you ready? I see. You
got a lot of questions.
You're brewing one over there.
So many
ask your questions.
Go ahead.
The next question has to do, and we spoke about it, is about performance, especially men. Right? A lot of times, and you linking this to enjoyment, fulfillment, and so on. A lot of times, men, however, they find it that they don't perform or they don't last as long in bed. Right? Maybe it's 30 seconds, maybe it's less. And I
remove my expression.
I was told.
Of course.
Right? So what are some of the things with guys that and as I was actually told, some guys they drink a lot of alcohol, right? And in my head I sort of find a linkage there, but I don't know if it's actually true. But these guys, they drink a lot and so on, and then performance wise, they don't seem to last that long. Is this a mental thing? Is it something that can be reversed? Is this where does the problem lie, and how can it be rectified?
The answer to that is not a simple, straightforward one, because there are a plethora of issues that could cause a man to. I'm actually talking about erectile dysfunction, and you're talking about premature ejaculation, and there are lots of things as well that can cause that. Could be overexcitement, it could be lack of experience, it could be person is overly stimulated. It could be a whole number of reasons, and here is where it requires for the woman now to be the patient one.
I was just thinking that.
Here is it, because listen, if all I could think about is, oh my God,
What's she gonna say?
then it becomes difficult for me to actually work on lasting longer. So if I feel like she's patient, then it helps me. You asked about alcohol, and alcohol is an inhibitor. It kind of slows down our physical processes, so to speak, our physical performance. And so if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, then it could cause problems in the bedroom. It actually affects sex. A lot of people feel sexier
Right.
when they've had a few drinks. And yes, maybe you might feel sexy because what happens is you're less inhibited. But that doesn't say that it will not affect your performance, because remember, alcohol affects performance, your ability to drive, your ability to walk a straight line, and your ability to perform in bed.
Right.
All right, so that is one thing, and it requires patience, it requires talking, it requires a whole mindset and a thought process, which we very likely don't have enough time to go through. And there's so many things that a person can do to help themselves last longer. Sometimes it's a matter of shifting positions. Sometimes it's a matter of pausing during the activity, which a lot of women don't like, because now I got to pause so he could.
Well, he got to do something in the pause.
While he could wind things.
Touch something, do something, you have to do something in the
to keep you alive, right? So and eventually, well, the persons that I have worked with, eventually they get to a place where everybody is happy. But you have to be patient with the process. And sometimes it's the man who has to be patient in terms of foreplay and getting the woman warmed up, and sometimes it is the woman who has to be patient in helping him cool down so that he doesn't go too fast.
And if he has a challenge, being supportive in
be supportive so that he doesn't feel bad about it, because the more I think about doing it right, the more difficult it becomes for me to actually focus on, quote unquote, doing it right. So he shouldn't be made to feel like less of a man because he's not. Listen, as dominant as, I'm going to reveal my age here, as Michael Jordan was in his day, he didn't win all of his games. Let me go with LeBron James. As gifted as he is, he doesn't win all of his games. As dominant as Usain Bolt was, he didn't win all of his races. And so a man is allowed to not win sometimes. Sometimes you can come in second. Well, in this case, losing is coming in first.
Oh my guys, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and your willingness and openness. I don't think we have enough of these conversations in our culture. It's framed in a way that often isn't productive, but we need to be able to talk through these things, to share our experiences. So I'm hoping it was beneficial to you. If you have not yet liked and subscribed to our page, please do so. If you have any comments, any thoughts, anything you would like to share, drop a comment in the chat. If you want to connect with Mr. Campbell, his details are in the link below. So take good care and see you next time.